Welcome. You're listening to the Little Fireface Project podcast. I am producer.
And I'm Amy.
And we are both master students at Oxford Brookes University studying primate conservation.
So we had heard that the LFP had recently achieved their wildlife-friendly coffee certification, and we wanted to know a bit more about what this label actually means. So this week, we're joined by Sophie Manson and Dr. Marco Campera, who lead the wildlife-friendly coffee programme at LFP.
Thank you for joining us. It'd be really nice to get a little introduction about who you guys are and how you're involved in the Little Fireface Project and their wildlife-friendly coffee.
I'm Sophie Manson. In 2019, I started my role as field station coordinator at the Little Fireface Project field station in Cipaganti in West Java, Indonesia. I had been following the project for a long time. I was very inspired by their outreach, the work they do, the novel research. So becoming the field station coordinator was pretty much a dream come true. And as I arrived, Marco, who coordinates the coffee program, the wildlife friendly coffee program, had just left, and it was kind of left to me to help with the running. So I became very involved in the coffee program that way, meeting farmers, organising meetings, training, that kind of thing. And became completely in love with the idea of this sustainable and wildlife friendly coffee.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. And Marco, what about you?
Hello, I'm Dr. Marco Campera, and I'm a postdoc here at Brookes. So my main role is like coordinating the coffee project. So I'm a research fellow, so my program is on wildlife-friendly coffee. So I study like the biodiversity in coffee plantations, and I develop like all these actions that we did in Indonesia to try to get the people involved in the certification.
So I think we just wanted to learn a little bit more about what wildlife-friendly coffee is. So what is wildlife-friendly coffee?
So what wildlife-friendly coffee is kind of integrating biodiversity into the actual agriculture, into the growing of coffee. And that can be achieved in many different ways. So one way we do that is through natural pest control, so not using any chemicals, we use kind of hormone-based pest control, and also natural pest control can include the presence of animals, so such as lorises or civets. And then another way of doing that is by using natural fertilizers, not using herbicides. Ensure a very key part of wildlife friendly coffee is ensuring that there is habitat for wildlife within these farms. And like I said before, it was an agroforest environment. So the slow lorises existed really very well within it. So it's ensuring that wildlife can give these very useful ecosystem services, such as natural pest control, such as pollination of shade trees for the coffee, and then also seed dispersal. It's making sure that biodiversity is integrated into the very kind of the basic levels of this agriculture.
Of course, wildlife friendly also means like that you have a certification wildlife friendly. So it's like wildlife friendly is a specific certification that with strict criteria on, especially on conservation of key threatened species. So the wildlife friendly is a company that is promoting like conservation through like certified products. So it's like similar to fair trade, but in a much smaller scale, and also fair trade is more focused on people, while wildlife friendly is more focused on the conservation of threatened species. So a key criteria for getting wildlife friendly certification was to have like a full hunting ban, and that is one of the criteria. So and then the others are like using more organic, chemical instead of chemicals, and of course, like there should be benefits for the community, for the local communities. So that are the key criteria for wildlife-friendly certification.
I was interested reading this because I saw that you've implemented this hunting ban, and I suppose I was trying to work out for the community the economic benefits of this decision, because I know that you could probably get a fair bit of money for a loris in the trade industry. So how is it that you can sort of sell this idea to them that this is an economically viable decision, and is it more economically beneficial to these communities?
So when I first started having meetings with them, we tried to understand what measure we could take together, like to try to get the certification. And one of the issues was that there was still some hunting in the area, so not a lot actually. So that was quite easy, because already with the measure that LFP did in those years, like the previous years, the hunting pressure was like very limited, and there are only a few hunters in the area, and they mainly hunt for hobby, and they mainly hunt like some birds mainly, or some civets. So that's so the ideas to face this came actually from the farmers, like that we can enforce like a law, like a local law. And so actually the farmers themselves, after talking with me, started to think about this, and like in a few months they started developing this law and having meetings with the different head of the neighborhoods in the village, and with the Kepaladesa, that is the head of the village. So that was really I thought that came mainly from the farmers. So that because they said that it could have been possible, like only through the community, not by us. So all the process of the hunting ban was I mean, we were there, of course, but we tried to stay a bit aside, not to get too much involved. Otherwise, it would have been like a constriction, like to the local communities. So actually, we wanted the community to feel that they wanted the hunting ban.
I have to say, it's just awesome, isn't it? That and this is how conservation should be. That they are the ones, they are the experts. They live there. They know what works. Yeah, I suppose. Do you think they've always been so pro loris and sort of pro sustainable practices, or do you think that is due to this kind of long-term project that the LFP has been doing there with environmental education?
So it's actually really interesting. The farmers have a lot of kind of myths and legends about the wildlife in Indonesia and in their local, like around them in the agroforest environment. And that really works to LFP's favour, because there was this pre-existing kind of respect, especially for lorises. There's a couple, well, first of all, they're kind of considered these like guardians of the forest. Most people find them kind of creepy because they are these kind of nocturnal animals that go around very slowly, and they're kind of unknown. So they have this kind of spiritual, well, people have this spiritual belief in them. But also there is a particular myth that I was told by one of the leaders of like farming groups in Cipaganti, Pakajum. He mentioned that there's actually a myth that, well, a legend that if anyone touches a loris, or the blood of a loris, sorry, quite explicit, like the blood of a loris falls on their farm, their business will fail, and they'll lose money. Which is, yeah, I mean, very handy for our conservation work, because really, like Marco said, there actually wasn't that much loris hunting in the area anyway. But yeah, of course, LFP arriving in the area did add a kind of a different angle to that conservation. So kind of worked off this innate respect, innate care for the environment, and kind of almost kind of used that to push in this kind of respect for biodiversity from another angle.
That is a bit of a dream for a conservationist, isn't it? I think you've already touched on it, to do with what it means to be wildlife friendly. But I just know for consumers, you know, I go into a supermarket and I often do just buy things because they look good. So fair trade, organic, eco-friendly, I just, you know, I see those labels and I tend not to really think about what they mean, but just assume they're good. But how would you say, and sort of, could you summarize in a few sentences exactly how wildlife friendly products differ from, for example, organic or fair trade for consumers?
Yeah, so for sure, like having like less chemicals in the production, and also having like a lot of pollinators, and so having like a sustainable and environment is making also the coffee quality much higher.
I'm pro anything that produces good quality coffee. Sophie, would you add anything to that in terms of the distinction between wildlife friendly and other labels that we see?
So I think what's also really cool about wildlife friendly is that it is quite, as much as it does kind of concentrate on the conservation of specific threatened species, it just has such wide-ranging benefits. So it's done, you know, primarily for the conservation benefits, but because of this inclusion because of this kind of integrating biodiversity into the farming, it's beneficial for every step of the way. So it's beneficial for the animals, it's beneficial for the farmers, and then therefore it's beneficial for the community. So so when people see wildlife friendly, as much as it will initially be, you know, the conservation of threatened species, it will also, you can be certain that actually everyone is benefiting from this move through you know, increased prices for their products, because they're being bought by more kind of conscious consumers and therefore at a premium price. You know, there's no kind of awful runoff from their farms for using chemicals. The benefits are just enormous, and it is incredibly cool. So it's a very unique and very exciting certification.
It sounds to me like the big thing is that it's actually directly contributing to the conservation of a species. Yeah. Right. But it also, like you say, I guess it can encompass kind of what fair trade does and what organic does as well, without necessarily focusing on that as it becomes a sort of side effect of what you're doing.
And I don't know if this is a top secret trade secret, but I was just wondering, what is this organic pest control that you guys use?
This organic solution for pests is like, for the coffee fruit borer, is like a sort of trap that is selected to the pest through the coffee borer, because there is some glue and pheromone that is attracting this specific species that is a pest of the coffee fruit. So we saw that it's very selective, like not many other insects get attracted to that. So we have pictures of that, and we got like in 1 week maybe an average of 200-300 coffee pest borers, like in one paper that is like 10 by 30 centimeters.
So am I right in thinking, did I get this right? So the coffee borer, is it like a beetle or something that is attracted to the coffee? And did you say it's like a sticky, like a glue that you stick, you kind of attract them and they stick to it, and that's your method of pest control? I think I got a bit confused.
Yeah, so yeah, we have like a piece of paper, kind of laminated paper, and we put like this glue that has also pheromones, and that attract just these species there. And we put that in the middle of coffee plantations.
Really impressive when you see it, because it literally is just this insect. it really is very selective. So, there's what we're trying to do is encourage, but a diverse array of species, insect species, into the area, and you can do that by, in this agroforest environment, it encourages this kind of large diversity. So we don't want to sacrifice that. So this high selectivity is really important, and just really impressive. It really is justice for us.
Obviously, we've spoken a lot about the Little Fireface Project. So what does being wildlife friendly mean for them? I know they've recently got your certification in, I think it was October 2020. What does that mean for the Little Fireface Project? It's quite significant for their coffee.
And I guess just adding to that, I guess kind of LFP's role now that we've got certification, is also concentrating on kind of helping with making links with places that would want to sell it, want to sell the coffee, and connecting this wonderful coffee and this amazing community with people that really want to support that kind of work. So like Marco said, this is born from the community, and it's very important that this is now kind of a sustainable long-term project. But one thing that LFP can do, well, what we're trying to do, and our role can be, is allowing this to now be bought by people that want to support wildlife friendly.
So I think the main for sure it was a big achievement, because after such a long time, like with working with the communities, like this was like a celebration, like for LFP. So it's like there was a big step, and also it can mean that in the near future we can think about some form of self-sustainability for the local communities without LFP being there, because we don't know how much LFP can be in that area. So if we leave something like that in place, it means that we can ensure a long-term conservation of the species, even like if one day LFP will leave the area, because we don't know. So it's like nobody knows. I mean, it's already an achievement to have LFP there for 8 years, but many times like conservation projects that do not last so long. So it's like we need to think about a form of self-sustainability that will ensure the long-term conservation of the species without us being there as well. And also that we will bring the benefits for the communities without us being there.
And I had another question, just because I'm trying to get the link in my head. How exactly is this project contributing to loris conservation? I feel like it's probably an obvious question, but I just want to hear exactly, what it's doing to protect the lorises and how.
Well, the lorises, obviously, it's directly helping them in terms of a hunting ban. But like we said earlier, there wasn't actually that much loris hunting in the area. Although we do want to extend the hunting ban in the future. But it's, I think, more indirectly, it's just kind of breeding this respect for wildlife, and not only a respect for wildlife, but understanding the importance of wildlife. And by understanding and kind of seeing wildlife as beneficial to their business and beneficial to their agriculture, it is protecting the species, and it's ingraining that respect and want to be able to protect them. It's ingraining it into the community. I think I mentioned this earlier, but lorises are very beneficial to them in terms of the natural pest control they provide. And also they pollinate the shade trees, which are very key for this kind of coffee, as it shades them from this very direct sun in summer, when well, it's not summer, in the dry season when there is no rain. But also they pollinate those trees, and when there is more shade trees present, there's also a larger diversity of insects. So lorises, they're very important, not only for directly important for pollinating these trees and providing this pest control, but also just having larger biodiversity provides better quality agriculture, better quality coffee.
I had no idea they were such good pollinators, so that's really interesting. And I suppose, like you say, it's not just about the lorises, but it's about the fact that by conserving them, you're also protecting the biodiversity of the entire region. So that's a really nice way to think of it.
I'm actually really interested in the civet coffee trade and the exploitation of civets to get this coffee. And I was just wondering if we could get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so actually so for sure, like the civet coffee per se, like the one that they do commercially is not, is unethical. So, we cannot say anything good about that. The thing is, what we are trying to do is wildlife-friendly civet coffee. So, like trying to collect like the poo from the civets in the wild, the coffee plantations, and try to process that. So because actually they produce civet coffee in our field site, and they just collect the civet poo from the wild, and that is how they produce it. And we tried that, and it's the taste is very, is impressive. So it's like. If we manage to find, we cannot produce a lot, but I guess so for now, for sure, if you have like wild civets, you cannot produce a lot, but it can be maybe like a product that can be sold in very small quantities in the near future. If we will have more civets in our field site as well, because since they have been hunting in the last years, now there are not so many, but maybe with the stop of the hunting, they will come back soon. So maybe in a few years, we will have also a good quantity of wildlife-friendly civet coffee. That will be amazing. But yeah, for sure, like the civet coffee per se, like the commercial one is nothing that bad.
I actually feel awful because I did buy some of that when I first went to Bali. I just didn't think it through, and I remember going to one of the farms there, and when I look back on it afterwards, I realized how terrible it was. But you just get caught up in it and you don't really think it through what they're doing. And it's such a big thing in Bali and Ubud. There's so many tours. I think a lot of people still go to that.
Oh, it's a huge industry. I actually visited Bali just before I came home, and I was quite bowled over by you're bombarded with it. And it's this idea that it's trying to feed into this idea that it is about the wildlife. And I think that's what I find quite exciting about this idea about wildlife friendly civet coffee, is because I think we really need to highlight the fact that commercial civet coffee, whatever they say, is unethical. There's various levels it can be, ranging from just feeding a civet coffee to keeping it in cages all day, and but really at all levels it is unethical. And hopefully by kind of starting this process of finding coffee, civet coffee in the wild, civet poo, and processing it in really small batches, and hopefully us being able to kind of do education on it over the next couple of years, maybe it will kind of get that conversation going, and help people to realize that really the only way this can be ethical is using wild civet coffee. But yeah, it's animal lovers really want to do these things because they see, oh, civets, that's really cool. But yeah, sadly it is just a really awful industry.
If you just do wildlife friendly civet coffee from the wild, you just do a very small quantity of that. So and also, yeah, the coffee that the actual civet coffee that you get like commercially is not even the best quality, because the coffee that they give them is just normal coffee, while in the wild they select the best berries. So that is another thing like to consider.
Can you maybe explain a little bit about what the commercial process is for civet coffee?
So I'm by no means saying I'm an expert on the civet coffee industry, but in very basic terms, to make it commercial, it is kind of almost like farming civets. So it's feeding civets coffee. You know, some places like it's really quite like force feeding. But yeah, it's making sure that civets eat a lot of coffee so they can produce a lot of civet coffee. And like Marco touched on there, it's completely different to how that happens in the wild. When civet coffee was first discovered, they get to choose the berries, they get to choose the most, you know, the most luscious, the most delicious berries, which in turn makes the best coffee. But when the civets are just kind of force fed this often not good quality coffee, it's you know, they then take that poo, which isn't very good coffee, and yeah, so it's farming. It is a farming industry basically. And what's really bad about it is not only is it bad quality coffee, but the civets have they have a really wide broad diet. They can't just eat coffee. That isn't what they survive on. It's only a small part of their diet. So yes, that's not only does it, God forbid, produce awful coffee, but it's just awful for them in general, in terms of that is not the natural way a civet would exist in the wild.
I was wondering if the coffee plantations themselves that you've got going, are they habitats for civets and lorises as well?
So yeah, they are the main habitat for the civets and the slow lorises, and also other animals like leopard cats also live move in that agroforestry systems. Actually, the slow lorises and the civets are much more present in the agroforestry system than in the forest. So actually, that's their main habitat. It became their main habitat now. And if we have well-preserved agroforestry system with good connection, with good connectivity between trees, and a good variety of shade trees, and a good mixture of crops as well, because we cannot have a monoculture of just coffee. So in that area we don't have just coffee. There are different other crops that are interconnected with coffee. So that is a very good environment for lorises and civets, but not just them. And also a lot of songbirds live in that area. So yeah, we found a very high diversity also of butterflies, with 54 species of butterflies. So it's that is a very rich area. And if we try now to improve connectivity and to show them the importance of using organic, I mean, I'm sure that it will even attract more biodiversity there, and it's already rich. We are monitoring the coffee plantation also with camera traps, and soon we will have the data to see exactly how many mammal species live in that coffee plantations.
And just adding to that, I think it's important to note, with growing populations worldwide, there's often this idea that any kind of human impact is bad, and any area that is vulnerable to human impact is likely to not have good diversity of animal species. And I think this is just a really good example of how you can live together and it not be a complete disaster. Like Marco said, there was a recent study this year showing that actually lorises do just exist better in agroforest environments than they do in literal national parks. So it's I think it's when there is this respect for wildlife, there's knowledge of them, and there is knowledge of how both can benefit each other. Wildlife can benefit the community, and how the community can benefit wildlife. Yeah, I think it's just really beautiful, and yeah, just it's a really good example of how, you know, we're not all doomed, and there can be this smallholder agriculture, conscious agriculture can work in collaboration with conservation.
And given the extent of shift in agriculture, like for conservation, like I mean the shift in agriculture is the main threat for primates, for example. So it's like, and also the increase in the population in some areas. So we need to find ways and solutions like to integrate these with wildlife conservation. So the best way is like to implement like sustainable agriculture systems, and that is possible for some crops, maybe not for others, but for example, like for coffee and cocoa is possible. So we need to promote like these systems where possible. So sustainable and wildlife friendly crop systems.
I have to say, this has cheered me up on a Tuesday morning, because so much of our lectures, we're often looking at the flaws of conservation and, you know, is there really a win-win solution? And I really think what you're presenting is, you know, a really good example of coexistence, and wildlife and humans both benefiting. So it is really uplifting to see this work. I just wonder do you think the lorises are particularly well suited to an agroforestry habitat? Do you think this could be rolled out for, you know, orangutans or larger primates, for example?
I mean, lorises are particularly they can adapt to these environments very quickly, and I'm not entirely certain that this would be so successful so quickly, so fast in other environments. But also, like Marco touched on earlier, it very much isn't a monoculture, and it also, there is still this habitat that still exists. So it's, you know, in places like Borneo, where they are just like cutting down swathes of forest and just putting in palm, and you know, it's just very intense agriculture. That's obviously that's a very different problem that the slow lorises aren't experiencing in our area of Java. So you know, as much as I think I'm not sure, you know, the same can be applied everywhere and it'll be equally as successful, but what can be applied everywhere and I think could be successful is this idea that everything can be sustainable. Well, not everything, but you know, some crops are really quite good at being farmed sustainably. So it's this idea of balance that I think will work everywhere, but definitely I think you have to be conscious of, you know, just picking up this idea and putting it elsewhere and it immediately working. The lorises are pretty lucky, I've got to say. They have a pretty cushy life in Cipaganti.
Yeah, so I think a good solution is like what we have there, like that the forest is bordered by this agroforest system that is sustainable, let's say. So this agroforest system can act like as a buffer for the forest. So some animals will find a better life in the agroforest system that is sustainable, and that way also protects like the forest because it has this buffer zone that is made by this sustainable farming system. And of course, like there are some species that prefer the forest and some species that prefer human modified habitats. But if we have this system with the buffer zone that is like a human modified habitat that is sustainable, and an indoor zone that is like a natural park and natural forest, we can preserve all the species. So we need to find like this sustainability. Like what we need to avoid is the edge that is like directly like impacting like the forest, the inner forest as well, to preserve these species that prefer the inner forest.
So, for example, just very, very quickly, the gibbons that basically we in Cipaganti, that's kind of what it's like. There is this agroforest environment that kind of borders this kind of more dense forest above. And yeah, the lorises obviously have kind of come down and made their homes next to human habitation. But yeah, the gibbons have stayed very much up at the top. So yeah, there's some animals that really do just prefer a more dense forest, and the lorises somehow have managed to adapt. So yeah, that is that's a good example of that in Cipaganti.
I think these lorises are incredibly lucky. Not only do they have the LFP, but they are evolutionary, like adaptable to these environments. So yeah, it's really interesting. We're going to end on a less intellectually heavy note. So Brigitte's in charge of our Facebook page, and she does fun facts every Wednesday about primates. I learned last week that macaques have cheek pouches, like a hamster, which I was fascinated by. We wondered if you guys could share your favourite primate fact.
My favourite fact, and it is always people's favourite fact, and Marco's going to laugh and also everyone's going to laugh because everyone knows this, but obviously lorises are venomous, which is just super cool. But when they park their basically when they forage, and when a mother you've got a baby in tow, she parks them in a tree and completely and like covers them in this venom, and just kind of lets them sit there all soggy with this venom, and while she goes off and forages. And I just love that. I think it's very cute. So that's my fave fact.
I have to say that was an amazing fact. I did not know that, and that is adorable. I love that.
So since you were talking about slow lorises, I made so we cannot repeat the slow lorises, and I will have to say a fact about maybe brown lemurs, that they use like the Scolopendra venom to spread themselves to remove like the parasites from the cells. So the Scolopendra are like centipedes that are poisonous and venomous. So they kind of take them and kill them and spread themselves with those like toxins to kill the parasites in their body. So that is maybe, yeah, because you told about lorises, so I cannot repeat lorises.
No, I was hoping that you'd do lemurs. I was thinking you would. I didn't think I was stealing your fact there, but that's a cool one. I like that.
Doesn't it make them really sleepy afterwards?
Yeah, they are like a bit sleepy, like they are like intoxicated, let's say. So it's like, yeah, I think they published like a paper like last year or something like that, and there was some videos going around. So I like that's a fun fact about brown lemurs.
I think that's a good note to wrap up on. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
So thanks to everybody for listening. We hope that you've enjoyed hearing a positive conservation story, and that you're looking forward to trying wildlife-friendly coffee as much as we are.
If you'd like to find out more about the Little Fireface Project and their wildlife-friendly coffee, go to nocturama.org.